This week on the West Bloc, Ukrainian cities bombarded with rockets. Russia's invasion intensifies, putting the entire region on edge. With hundreds of Canadian troops in Latvia leading a NATO mission, Mercedes Stephenson sits down with Latvia's president. The unfolding humanitarian crisis.
We're also ready to welcome more Ukrainians to Canada.
More than 1 million Ukrainians have crossed the border into neighboring countries, many of them into Poland. Canada's ambassador to Ukraine is there, and we'll talk to her about Ottawa's plan to help many who want to come here. And the date is set for the Conservative leadership.
And that's really our responsibility, to be that national political party.
As former Quebec Premier Jean Charest considers entering the fray, a Conservative strategist shares his insights. It's Sunday, March the 6th, and this is the West Bloc. Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Eric Sorensen. Well, the Prime Minister arrives in London today ahead of talks tomorrow with British and Dutch Prime Ministers. Western leaders are united in condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Justin Trudeau will also travel to Germany, Poland, and Latvia. That's where Canadian troops are leading a NATO mission. Mercedes Stephenson, the host of the West Bloc, is in Latvia. Mercedes, what is the mood there?
Eric, the feeling here in Latvia is one of some anxiety and concern. There is definitely a sense of deep sympathy and solidarity with the Ukrainian people. Every night we hear the Ukrainian national anthem being blasted outside of our hotel on large speakers. This is a country that remembers what it was like to be invaded by Russia, by the USSR, and there is concern for Latvia's future. Not that there is an immediate security threat, but certainly that this is a country that could find itself between the crosshairs in the future if Vladimir Putin is trying to reunify what was once the USSR.
Mercedes, you sat down with the president of Latvia, Egils Levits. What did he have to say?
Eric, President Levits is so grateful for Canada's commitment and the 540 Canadian soldiers who are here, with about another 150 or 160 who are on their way to shore up that presence. He believes that what we're seeing in Ukraine is a fundamental attack on democracies, on the Western way of life, and that the whole post-Second World War global security order is changing, and that the West must recognize that and stand up for what we believe in. Here's my interview with President Levits now.
We're here in Latvia, your beautiful and very brave country, but I know there is deep concern about two of your neighbors, Russia and Belarus. When you look at the scenario now, I know you've said you don't feel there's an immediate threat to Latvia. The Russians are not going to roll across the border tomorrow. But what do you feel the medium and long-term threats to your country are from Vladimir Putin?
Immediately, we are worrying about Ukraine. And it's the same situation for whole Europe and for all NATO states, because the aggression against Ukraine is in the same time aggression against Europe, against NATO, against the Western world, against democracy, and all democracy is, in the world are concerned about that. Concerning Latvia, we have no immediate threat, but of course the environment, the security environment in Europe has changed dramatically. The post-war peace order is not more valid, and we should seek for a new order where we should count with an aggressive Russia.
Do you feel that Ukraine should be brought into NATO, or is it simply too late for that?
In the middle term, I would say yes, it is ready to join, but it is not on the agenda now.
There has been some hesitancy from some European countries to go as hard as possible on the sanctions initially, and it seems like that has changed. You now have Germany, for example, lifting a historic decision not to export arms. Do you feel the West is united in its position against Russia and effective?
Yes, absolutely. The West is united, and it was one of the surprises for Putin that the West is so united. Of course, in order to make decisions, it is necessary to have some time, some days at least. And how some member states of NATO, member states of the European Union has changed their long-standing politics. For example, Germany, it deserves respect because now they are facing with the reality. The reality is an aggressive Russia, and we should deal with this reality, with an aggressive Russia.
What is the best way to deal with an aggressive Russia? Is it fighting Russia? Is it creating the NATO no-fly zone that would involve NATO airplanes trying to protect that? How should the West deal with this?
Immediately, NATO states are already dealing with that and giving all necessary support for Ukraine in order that Ukraine can defend themselves. There are military equipment which comes from United States, from United Kingdom, from Germany now, also from Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, from many NATO states. It is immediately necessary for Ukraine. Then, of course, economic and financial support in middle and long term. This is one thing, one direction, support to Ukraine. The other is to impose the heaviest possible sanctions to Russia.
You have Canadian troops here, 540 of them. There's more coming, an artillery battery and a few electronic warfare troops. Do you think that that is enough from Canada, or is there more that you plan to ask Prime Minister Trudeau for when you meet with him?
Yes, it is. The Canadian presence is very important for Latvian security, for the security of the whole Northern European region. Because the Canadian presence shows that NATO is present and it is a part of NATO's politics of deterrence. It is an anti-war instrument to be present here in order to warn Moscow.
If you could ask the Prime Minister of Canada for one other thing, what would it be?
I would say the presence of Canadian troops are very, very important. It is also one, there are other needs to improve the capacity of our Latvian military troops. I would also say that the political unity of NATO is very, very important, and I see that Canada is contributing to the political unity and to political profile of NATO very much.
You've stated that you believe Ukraine should be brought into the European Union. Why would you like to see that?
I have proposed to give to Ukraine a candidate status in a political decision, urgent political decision, now, very soon. It would be a political act of the European Union to show the Ukrainians that they belong to Europe and that Europe needs Ukraine. Concerning bureaucratic procedures, I know Ukraine is not now formally ready to be a member state, full member state of the European Union. But all the bureaucratic procedures should be, in this situation, put away, and we need a political decision.
You also share a border with Belarus. Would you like to see the international community doing more about that country and that regime in that country?
Politically, Belarus has ceased to exist as an independent country. We should see Belarus politically as a part of Russia. Belarus, or more precise, regime Lukashenko, is participating in the aggression against Ukraine, and also all the sanctions are now adopted not only against Russia, but also against Belarus.
Mr. President, is there anything else you would like to say to Canadians today?
Canadians are together with Europe, and transatlantic links between Europe and Canada are very, very important for us Europeans, and I think also for Canadians. Together, we are the basis for the Western value system, and we should defend our values.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. President.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
The desire to express comfort to the Baltic countries and resolve against Vladimir Putin will manifest in the form of a number of visits from high-level North American leaders to this part of the world in coming days. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will be visiting Latvia, among other countries, and Secretary of State Blinken from the United States will also be visiting this country and meeting with President Levits. Eric?
Thank you, Mercedes. Up next, we'll speak to Canada's ambassador to Ukraine about the humanitarian crisis at the border in Poland and what Canada is doing to help.
You're watching the West Block on Global.
The UN estimates up to 4 million Ukrainians will flee the country as the Russian invasion drags on. Thousands are streaming across the borders with neighboring countries every day. Canada's ambassador to Ukraine, Larisa Galadza, is near the Polish border, where we reached her on Friday to talk about the crisis. Ms. Galadza, first of all, we're seeing this sea of humanity. Describe what it is like.
Like a sea of humanity. It's people standing in lineups, many of them on foot, but a lot of them still in cars coming over the border. I'm glad to say that in the last few days, the lineups, the waits at the border have really come down, thanks to the hard work of Ukrainian border guards and Polish border guards and the entire system on this side of the border to move them along. But it's people and their possessions. It's mostly women and children and elderly, and they're looking for safety.
The immigration minister has said there will be no limit on the number of Ukrainians who can come to Canada, at least on a temporary basis. How will that work? How many? How soon? Just give us a sense of how this is going to work.
I think I know that the details of how that's going to work are being quickly sorted out and developed by Ottawa. But I think what's important is that Ukrainians will have options. And they'll have speed, and they'll be able to come to Canada if they want. Ukrainians also have a lot of options in Europe, so I think that Canada is doing what Ukrainians know Canada is good at: opening its doors, saying come for a little bit if you need, come for a longer period if you need, and we're here to help you in your time of need.
There's a real need for aid and weapons, for that matter, inside Ukraine. Are you seeing some of that aid come through Poland, and is it getting into Ukraine where it's needed?
Yeah, it is. Let me talk about the military equipment first. I was actually at the Airhead yesterday, watching that come through, and it is a remarkable operation. Nothing sits long there, and it's moving through. The humanitarians are now on the ground in great numbers, and they're doing that job that they need to do of building that big pipeline into Ukraine, and from there the logistics that need to happen to get the humanitarian assistance where it needs to be. Unfortunately, for the moment, a lot of the places that need that humanitarian assistance most still aren't accessible to the humanitarian actors, and there's a lot of work underway right now to create the safety and security that they need to go in.
Russia's foreign minister has made a cold calculation that the West will get over this if Russia indeed does take over and destroy Ukraine. We've seen it before in Georgia and in Crimea. Eventually, life goes on in the rest of the world. Will this be any different?
It's not the first miscalculation I think that Russia has made. And the response that we're seeing from our like-minded governments, the response that we're seeing from Ukrainians themselves is unprecedented. And so I think that might just be another miscalculation.
These are terrible choices to have to confront as you watch what is happening over there. Should Ukrainians be expected? I mean, if NATO and the rest of the world is not going to intervene in a way that will turn around what Russia is doing, should Ukrainians be expected to just carry on as long as possible, dying in great numbers before this is over?
Ukrainians are doing what they need to do for the moment, knowing that all the systems in the world are working to support them, whether it's the delivery of more ammunition, whether it's the delivery of the non-lethal military equipment, delivery of humanitarian assistance, the help getting people out, the diplomatic work in Geneva, in New York, in Brussels. It is all working at high gear. Everyone is doing what they need to do. And for the moment, that means that Ukrainians inside Ukraine need to put up the fight of their lives.
The Ukrainians that are coming across the border and they're meeting with Canadians and seeing what the possibilities are they in good spirits? Are they just deeply troubled? Describe how they seem to be adapting to what's going on.
It's the strangest thing to just see. Everyone's doing what they need to do. They are moving their children along. They're driving the transport trucks back into Ukraine, and there's a stoicism and this hardness about this determination in getting that done. And then they have their moments of deep grief and sadness and pain. But for the most part, when you see them in these large numbers, everyone's doing what they need to do. I think they're being strong for their children. They're being strong for their colleagues in Ukraine, and taking the next step they know they need to take.
Your four grandparents are Ukrainian, and when you took over this job 2 years ago, you could not have foreseen the way the job would be happening right now. What's it like for you?
I guess feeling the weight of the unprecedentedness of it all. And that's not just because of my background, but because none of us expected this. And I share that with my colleague ambassadors, many of whom are here right now. A month ago, 2 months ago, we were deep in the details of supporting Ukraine on its really fundamental reforms that it was making, really historic things that Ukraine was doing, and now here we are, and we like those brave Ukrainians, we're doing what we need to do.
Ms. Galadza, thank you. Keep safe and good luck.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all the Canadians for their help.
Up next, one MP is officially in the race. Others are thinking about jumping in to become the next leader of the Conservative Party, including a political heavyweight from Quebec. We'll look at the potential field with Tory strategist Tim Powers after this.
You're watching the West Block on Global.
The Conservatives have announced they'll choose their new leader in 6 months. The field of candidates is just beginning to take shape. So far, high-profile MP Pierre Poilievre is campaigning for the job, but he will soon have company. Joining us now to talk more about the candidates and the race is Tory strategist and chair of Summa Strategies, Tim Powers. Tim, in September, the Conservatives will choose their fourth leader in less than 7 years. Even as others get into the race, is Pierre Poilievre the man to beat?
I think he set himself up to be the man to beat. Certainly with his announcement, Eric, he wanted to get out of the gates quickly, show that he had lots of people supporting him, get lots of people on side, the so-called Bigfoot strategy. But will he be the Sasquatch that gets seen at the end is to be determined. But right now, yeah, I would say he's in the catbird seat. But 6 months in a conservative leadership race with a bigger field could change that positioning when we get to the end.
Well, for political old-timers, Jean Charest is an intriguing figure. He's already been criticized by the Poilievre camp. He was once the brightest rising star in the Mulroney cabinet 35 years ago. Well, it's 2022. What does he offer now?
And disclosure, and 29 years ago when he ran for the PC party leadership, I helped support him when I was working for John Crosby, but I'm agnostic right now. What does he offer now? I think he offers something that Mr. Poilievre and potentially other candidates to come into this race, like Patrick Brown, like Leslyn Lewis, like Scott Aitkenson, don't, and that's a lot of experience. I think the Charest proposition is going to be, look, yes, I haven't been part of this party, but I've dealt with tough and difficult issues. I'm a grown-up, and I am a conservative. He's going to have to defend against criticism that he's not from the Poilievre camp around all of that, and that I can bring people together. Those, I suspect, will be his messages, juxtaposed with Mr. Poilievre, who's already come out and said, you're not a conservative, you supported the carbon tax, you supported the long gun registry. Eric, if we know anything so far about this leadership race, a pillow fight it is not going to be, a barroom brawl it will most certainly be.
And they seem to be the two shaping up to be on either ends of the bar in that barroom brawl. But there are other candidates, potentially. Patrick Brown, Leslyn Lewis, Michael Chong, Tasha Kiridan. Who and what are you going to be looking for?
Well, let's talk quickly about Patrick Brown, the mayor of Brampton, former federal Conservative MP. Interestingly, one of the last president, or the last PC party president, youth president, when Mr. Charest ran for the PC party, and Tasha Kiridan, by the way, was the PC party president in 1993. Of that group you've just mentioned, Patrick Brown has the most skill and ability in terms of signing up members. He could be a real threat to both Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Charest if he does enter. He won the PC party leadership. Of course, he stepped down after some significant allegations were made against him that he denied. Leslyn Lewis has proven that she's a pretty good campaigner, finishing third in the last race. Tasha Kiridan will have supporters across the country. For the Conservatives, Scott Aitkenson, MP, who's looking to make a name for himself, Chong as well, who ran previously. For the Conservatives, having all of those candidates is good for the party brand. That doesn't mean, as I say, there won't be a lot of blood left on the floor. For Mr. Charest and Mr. Brown, that creates opportunity, as it created opportunity for Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole and other Conservative leadership races, because in a ranked ballot, Eric, if you can't be the number one choice on the first ballot, you have to be everybody's second or third choice. I think Pierre Poilievre's strategy will be try to be the number one choice, where the others will play to be number two, and a bigger field allows you to create more dynamics and more opportunity if you are an underdog.
So the others want to be Joe Clark. All right. Tim Powers, thank you.
Now you're really dating yourself, but yes, that's right.
All right. Thank you, Tim. And that is our show for today. We'll be back again next Sunday. For the West Block, I'm Eric Sorensen. Thanks for watching.